right here at this school, I think it was 2012, I was hanging out down in the junior commons, which was the lobby for Sims. And I think somewhere between first and third period, I got a phone call from you, a real solemn phone call. And you said, Jesse, I was just in a really bad accident. I don't know what's going to happen. Someone could have died. And it was terrifying. And it was a side of you I'd never heard before. And it was a side of you that didn't go away for about a year. You know, I mean, you were like a ghost of yourself. Everyone knew you were massively stressed and you were wearing this immense guilt as far as, you know, how you felt about the injuries and the impact on the other person in this accident's life. So walk me through that period and how did you end up coming out of a phase like that?
It was January 3rd, 2013. And I was coming out of the gym, going to work just like every other day. And I go to turn left, and I see a truck coming down the hill. And there was some sun coming that way. And the truck passes, and I proceeded to go out to make a left turn. Well, I hit a person who was riding a motorcycle. You just don't expect someone on a motorcycle January 3rd when it's really cold. So I didn't expect that. I just didn't see him. And I was very fortunate in the sense that when I struck him, I didn't pull out in front of him. That could have been catastrophic. I didn't clip his tail end. That could have been catastrophic. I just bumped him right in the center of the motorcycle. That broke his ankle, and it scooted him over, so he kept going in a straight motion. But it had broken, I believe, his wrist and his ankle, so he couldn't brake properly. So then something happened. He slowed down in some way, and he kind of spun out. And I was in disbelief. I couldn't believe. Wow, what just happened? I think I hit that guy on the motorcycle. It was just him and me and another truck that had passed on. So I drove out over there and saw that he was down. Another car had stopped, and I was going to call 911, but that person called 911. And then the medics came down. And
before that, I mean, how did you react? So this dude, he goes a little bit further, crashes.
Yeah.
What happens right then?
I go over to him, and I see he's there, and he's in pain, still alive, but in pain. So I don't know what kind of injury he has. Is it internal? Did something happen? Is it life-threatening? So the ambulance came. They came and got him. And then a policeman came and spoke with me, in my vehicle, probably to see if there's anything in there and just asked me some questions. So then what happened is time goes on. We're about to leave to go to Cancun just within a couple days. And I can't get any, because of privacy, I can't get any information about how he's doing. The officer knew I was concerned, and so he would call me and give me updates. He's having a third surgery on his ankle, and so I knew that the injuries were not internal; they were external. But still, I hurt somebody. He couldn't go to work and do all these different kinds of things. So I was pretty devastated. I had not been in any accidents before like that, and so anyway, the whole process took about 3 years, to conclude. And the case ended up settling. He got a payment, and he was doing well. And that whole time, not knowing, if how I hurt him, how I might have injured his family from making a living, all those kinds of things just weighed really heavy on me. So it was a real tough time because I couldn't get any information because of all of the privacy issues.
So the way I remember that time, and something really cool actually came out of it, but I do remember you just being totally absent in the sense that, like, when we felt we were talking to you, it didn't seem like you were retaining any of the information. Like you all the time you were just kind of staring into the space, and no one was mad about it. We all knew why you were like that, but that was a period where these kind of like treasured memories come from where you would always come into my room late at night in like a moment of clarity. And I remember you'd be like reading the Bible or any of the like scientific quantum related books that you would read at that time, and you'd come in and just stand in my doorway in your underwear and flip flops and polo, and you'd explain to me what it was you had just learned, or what crazy track your train of thought was on that day. And one of the cool things that stuck with me from that time was I always thought about this question of like, why do religion and science have to exist exclusively from each other? Because it doesn't seem like that much of a stretch of the imagination that if you had a God who created everything, that the process of evolution couldn't also be something he set into motion. I never understood why those need to be separated. But you brought to me this theory one time of a multi-dimensional God entering a three-dimensional world, and this would be basically like a scientific explanation of Jesus. But you related it to a video game that you had made way back when, and I loved that explanation. And there's no way I could explain it better than you. Do you remember that whole conversation?
So the game was called Action Frank. Okay. So I was writing this little video game on a little Macintosh. And what the game did is I wanted to have a game that I could control a version of myself. So I took pictures of myself in karate moves and so on. And I still have those pictures. They're really funny. And kind of walking motions. So then what I could do is write the code that would make me move in that environment. So how do we create a parallax in an environment with things moving and so on? And so I could just walk and the environment would move, look like I was walking. I could do a karate kick and these kinds of things. And it started to make me think, here's what I have. I have, in this environment that I'm coding, 256 colors, 2 to the 8th power of colors available, not the millions that we have in our world. And then also, I have this little flat screen, and I have this little world that I've built for this character who's me. And then I added controls to make myself do different kinds of things. And it made me think of a much bigger picture, thinking of the world, now 3 dimensions, and adding flesh and blood and thought and all these different processes. And it started to make me think about, okay, so if I'm the creator, of myself, and I put the best version of myself into this little world, right, that then I can manipulate and move around, but then let the character maybe discover some things on its own, and step away. Well, how's that not like, the Lord putting his son on the earth in a flesh environment, something that had to live in this 3D space, because we're in a 3D space. And if the Lord is multidimensional, that's what he has to work with, right? He can do some astounding things in that 3D space. But for him to put a version of himself in there, Jesus in flesh and blood, and having to learn and interact in that space, I thought that was very interesting. And I didn't think about that until I was actually creating this Action Frank game. Because I could add more features, make the character grow and what it can do and how it would learn from its environment. And I didn't go all that far. I didn't keep moving with this game. But it started that thought process of, wow, if I could step out. I'm actually sitting outside of that in a 3-dimensional world where this character's in a 2-dimensional world in a sense. And how much more power if you could sit out of our 3-dimensional world in a multi-dimensional world, but you still have to work with the constraints of that. So it started that whole thought process.
Yeah. And that was just one of many super abstract conversations we had during those couple of years we talked topics from like irreducible complexity. That was a kick you were on for a long time, and quantum entanglement, and just awesome conversation. So thank you for all that. I'm glad that came out of that period.
It was a problem that I had as a kid. And I think there's lots of kids that have this problem. There's nobody to talk to who cares about these kinds of ideas or wants to. So you go out and you try and find an audience, which means you just talk to somebody and see how they react, right? Yeah. And if they don't walk away, hey, I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to keep bugging this person. For sure. And you were just in your room, but I had to tell somebody, right? Just like kids do. You need to tell somebody.
Yeah. You and I share that when it comes to technology. And I mean, we were just having that conversation while I was doing the podcast setup that, everything right down to the color coding of XLR cables is super exciting to someone out there. That's something I treasure Taylor for, is we get to talk all the time. We'll finish dinner, we'll finish our TV show, and then we'll just go into this unplanned, conversation about spiritual things or current event type things. So I really appreciate those conversations that we get to have late at night. But when I am doing something, whether it's building the guitar rack or putting this whole podcasting rig together, I'll pull her in just to explain it to her, because it is exciting when something comes together. And she I know when she genuinely has no idea what I'm talking about, and I really try to talk about things in layman's terms, but she always acts excited and interested. And I love that about her. I'm super lucky.